the money and everything,
Mhm.
would like the moms be like use their bodies?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It is, and again, not even just for that. Poor people. I think the misconception about prostitution, especially in Europe and in this time period, is that it was done by young women. A vast majority of prostitutes were married, and their husbands were understood well that this was necessary. This was the only way we were going to live. There was a whole business around certain types of prostitutes so that they had access to better dresses and hats so they could circulate among a better clientele. And they were called dress lodgers. They rented these dresses and they would go in, they would come in their regular clothing, they would rent a dress so that they can move into a place where they had the opportunity. So it was for many women, the only thing available. And one of the difficult parts about prostitution will be the laws that will be passed for prostitutions. There'll be, I think it might be in here pretty soon that we're getting to. There will be a contagious act law that will be about the spreading of sexually transmitted diseases, and the only people that will be prosecuted will be women as a result of that. Yes.
Okay. This is kind of back to what we were talking about, but still like prosecution. Was it a criminal offense to beat your wife?
Was it a criminal offense to be what?
To like hit your wife and kids? It was
No.
So
No.
No matter how hurt the woman was that was filing for divorce,
mm-hmm.
and this dude's like violent,
mm-hmm.
he still gets the kids.
Right.
And there's like no.
Yes. Well, first of all, there's no laws about hitting. So that the only thing, and I wouldn't even be sure what the law would be, is if you killed them. But I still don't think that there would be the same amount of prosecution. And this is the interesting part that we have to change, because look at our 1911 Parliamentary Act said that education was compulsory. That was a stretch. That was telling people what they had to do with their kids. And there was a lot of pushback. You can't tell me what I could do with my kids. You're not allowed to tell me what. And each time we move that line of what we will call government intervention into the personal lives of people, there's always a wiggle room. We accept a lot of things that the government intervenes in our lives based on all of these things, right? Like you can't attend high school unless you have certain vaccinations. Many people say, you're telling me how to raise my kid. That's my choice. Should I be able to do that? And we have had to, in the United States, legislate all of that. Just like the fact that we make you go to school, that your parents can get in trouble if they don't send you to school. That, again, is a wiggle room of where the personal liberty and your personal rights begin and where government can intervene into your life.
What is here? What's the rule on vaccination?
What?
Like here, what is the rule on vaccination?
You have to have certain ones. I don't know, but they can deny you access to education if you do not get those vaccines.
I was like, you're telling me anyone in this room can have smallpox, but no.
Say that again?
Not smallpox, like measles.
I've had smallpox vaccine.
Smallpox?
No, I've had the vaccine.
Oh, I was like...
No, none of you do, because we've eradicated that disease because of vaccinations. But there are certain vaccinations that you have to have. I don't know what they are. But
is that why you have to have like fifth grade shots?
Yep, that's what they're called. The 5th grade shots. The seniors just got their shots. Yeah, there's.
Mm-hmm. It's so weird to me that you can just choose to be a negligent parent like that.
But here's the argument, Maddie. There are lots of parents that see that in a very different light.
Is that a read?
Correct.
That's a choice I can make?
That's the discussion of the government intervention. And that's where we're at. So let's get back to women's suffrage. Existing laws prohibited women from inheriting property. And again, that might have been part of maybe Molly's grandma's concern. Maybe there was property that she would lose if there wasn't a male for that property to be attached to. By 1890s, women's rights activists realized that suffrage was the only key. So eventually they realized nothing is going to change for us unless we can vote. Nothing. And so thus begins this idea to promote the women's right to vote. They argued that men had not done enough to protect women, and many believed that female influence in public affairs would serve as a balance to masculine qualities that would balance out. Please look at number 3, right? Suffragettes come largely from the middle class. 2 reasons. 1, for the most part, they are educated. They've been exposed to feminist works in magazines, books, pamphlets. So they have had that. Middle class families had servants. They were free, just like Mrs. Banks, right? The reason Mrs. Banks could go to her suffragette meetings was because she had servants at home, watching her children, cooking her food, cleaning her house. And working class women and socialists distrusted the middle class. They worked on their goals independently. So that will also be a problem with the women's rights movement. Instead of one combined group, they mistrust each other very much. And the most important 2 women will be Millicent Garrett Fawcett and Emmeline Pankhurst. There are 2 groups, and this is important, and this is something that you need to understand about every kind of cause, no matter what the cause is, no matter if it's women's rights, minority rights, rights for disabilities, African American rights, Native American rights. Any movement has 2 key phases. The beginning will be Millicent Fawcett. Everyone is following the rules. We are protesting. We're holding up signs. We're getting people to sign petitions. We're working within the system to try to get change. Helped grow the suffrage movement, played a role in national and international suffrages, but nothing changes because still in Parliament, there is no need to grant women the right to vote. So these groups of women march, hold signs. These are what your moms will do. March, hold signs, heck no, we won't go, or we want rights, when, now, when do we want them, now. All that stuff your mom will do. Take little papers, clipboards, will you sign our petition? Will you help women's rights? Nothing changes. We can add any movement. Martin Luther King's movement of peaceful civil disobedience. Nothing changes. Nothing changes with Martin Luther King. Nothing, except they keep getting beat up and beat up and beat up. Okay, questions about what changes is when those groups decide to get violent. That's the only thing that changes. These women under Emmeline Pankhurst will become very violent. In our civil rights movement in the United States, we will get Black Panthers, Malcolm X. All of them will become very violent. Burn cities. And then people say, whoa, we better do something. It is the crucial part of every movement that no one will do anything as long as you remain peaceful and holding a sign. The only time anything has ever changed in the entire history of our country is violence. That's it. Revolutionary War, violence. What do? Tar and feather, burn, pour tea, all of it. At the same time, when all the other founding fathers are writing letters and petitions and declarations, and none of that changes. African Americans, Black Panthers, for the Native Americans, they take over the island of Alcatraz. They take over Wounded Knee, standing with guns. Nothing ever changes. And so that's what's going to happen with our militant suffragettes. And they'll be led by Emmeline Pankhurst. She is infuriated. They wouldn't give females the vote. Finland will get it in 1906, Norway in 1913. And so she is going to found a new women's group based on militant principles. Beginning in 1907, they undertook violent activities, destroying railroad station, works of art, stores, chaining themselves in front of Parliament. and they will put pipe bombs in, as they call, prams, and push them and blow crap up. I mean, they blew up stuff and did that purposefully.
So whenever you say that they like had people sign petitions, did men sign them? Like
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
Like our guys in our last chapter, John Stuart Mill, he worked towards women's suffrage. The problem is there wasn't enough of them. But there were men who were actively working in and with the suffragettes, just not a lot. And I am sure that there were probably men in Parliament that took up their cause, but just not enough to make any change. What's going to change is these women start blowing stuff up, and they blow up stuff a lot. Many of them will be arrested. They at one point want to be arrested because then they're going to go on hunger strikes. So they'll go into jail. They will be offered, pay a fine of $2 or 30 days in jail. They will on purpose say 30 days in jail. They go to jail and then they won't eat. And then they will be force fed with a tube. And when, I don't know if any of you have been unfortunate enough to have a relative have to be force fed or tube fed. You know, the little tubes are really microscopic. They have little ports. We don't have tubes like that in 1906 and 1907. They are very hard plastic tubes. They are shoved down your nose to the back of your throat. And then we also do not have Pedialyte, Pediacare, Boost, all the liquid types of nutrition that we have today. You would have raw eggs. So it was a very violent treatment. The women wanted it to be that way. They invited people in to draw pictures, take and draw illustrations to focus on this is how we're being treated. And it gets put across paper and things start to change. When public outrage at these force feedings, Parliament passed the Cat and Mouse Act that freed starved female prisoners from jail until they regained their strength and then returned to jail. So they had to try something else. So Emily Davidson committed suicide by throwing herself in front of the king's horse in 1913. Now, lots and lots of debate about if she really meant to commit suicide. For the most part, all women's history study people believe 100% she went there with the intent of committing suicide in front of the king. Representation of people, 1918. Females over the age of 30. And finally, in 1928, suffrage for women over 21. United States will get suffrage. Women will get suffrage before women in the UK. But it does take them until 1928. What's the matter, Maddie?
Wait, so, and who got it in 1918?
1906 and 1913, Finland and Norway.
But 1918 was?
1918 was women over 30.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
Okay.
women over 30. The first country that will give women the right to vote will be New Zealand. The last will be like 1970 in Switzerland.
Oh my God.
Yeah. How about that
I
one?
thought they were like progressive.
How about that
a
one?
thing?
I'm like 6 or 7 years old then. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah. Look it up. There's a couple other ones. Yes.
Okay, so in 1918, if you're over 30, you can vote.
Yep.
And then in
1928,
1928,
21.
So this whole fight started before 1918.
Oh, yeah. It
They
started in the 1890s.
They just worked
It
fast.
really starts, throwing in my research here, it really starts at the beginning of the century with Enlightenment when it moves to every place else. It just takes women a long time to mobilize. It's really hard for women to mobilize because there are so many things that they have to do. And the only reason that really in the 1890s, if we want to make a tie in, by the 1890s, we have that strong middle class in England, which, as I said, allows for women to do stuff outside of the home.
So they fought until 1918, and then we're not satisfied with 30 because done.
obviously.
And then
They kept going until
Right, so it
1928.
didn't start because they weren't satisfied.
Right. They what?
It didn't start because they weren't good with the one in 1918.
No. They no.
Okay.
No.
Also, why did the prison people care if they died? Like, I mean, obviously they should, but like, why? What did they benefit from not letting them starve themselves?
Propaganda. That's why they intentionally did that, to get on the front page of the news. In the United States, Alice Paul's going to do the same thing. Alice Paul's going to do the exact same thing in the United States. She and all of the suffragettes are going to do the same thing. They go to prison for blocking the sidewalk, a public sidewalk. That's what they go. They all choose to go instead of paying their $2 fine. And when they get in, they all go on hunger strikes as well.
And the prison people don't want them to starve themselves
Because they'll die in prison and become martyrs. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. This whole starvation in prison starts in Ireland with Irish. That's what they do. And the Irish have a whole list of people that died of starvation in prison. One guy, Bobby. I can't think of his last name. He was like 68 days without food and died, but I can't think of his name. And he died working towards independent Ireland. Yeah.
Okay, so you said like that they, after 1918, they continued to like,
Right.
that wasn't good enough. But did they do the exact same thing like the prison?
Yep, they keep doing the same thing. Yep, same thing. All right, so let's move to Ireland and this Young Ireland movement. Ireland is an island west of the British Isles at this point that is controlled by Great Britain. Ireland, for the most part, is Catholic. And during this idea of nationalism, when that ism in the 1948s starts to take hold, Ireland says, we need to rule our own country. Because Great Britain had cracked down, they can't speak their own language, couldn't wear their own do their own customs. So Gladstone, our liberal prime minister, says, that's right, Ireland should be able to rule themselves. However, because Great Britain had sent lots of people to rule over Ireland, there was a strong Protestant system. That's called the Ulsters. They opposed Irish Home Rule because they enjoy economic growth, because all the rules in Ireland are geared to make things better for Protestants. 1914, Irish Home Rule passed by Commons and Lords, but the Protestants will not accept it. And we have this big, huge Easter Rebellion. Independence crushed by British troops. By 1922, Ireland had gained independence. Northern Ireland remained part of the British Empire. So when we think about what the UK is made up of, the UK is made up of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And then a gazillion little islands like Shetland and Isle of Man. Okay. In World War I, Ireland will not send men to fight. Irish men will not fight in World War I. They will not fight under the flag of UK. They do not fight. If they do it of their own free will. But Ireland will not send them because they are not going to fight for or under the British flag.
So, was this stuff in the book, like the Eastern Question and the Parliament Act of 1901, was that in chapter 21 of the book?
Some of it is in chapter
Okay,
21.
I was like,
It goes over, this one kind of spreads over all of it.
Okay.
And I like to repeat and repeat and repeat because these are really important. Especially the Eastern Question. Again, the Ottoman Empire, the sick man of Europe. Do what?
It's dark.
Yeah. We're supposed to have bad storms.
Yay, maybe something.
I love bad storms.
I hate
So,
storms.
we will finish up this last 2 pages, or last 3 pages, tomorrow.
Unless they're raised